Right, welcome H Radio 223's part-timers to your last lesson of week 9, which is, let me just quickly share this here for you. Let's share the sound because we are going to be looking at some interviews as well. We are looking at interviews, as you just heard me say there, to round up this week's lessons. At any one point, also just remember that you can always contact me on the WhatsApp group if you need any help with any of the content that we're creating, the material that we're creating, or that we're going through. What am I saying? Right. So, yeah, of course, when it has some focus with your formatives that you currently are busy with at any point in the year. Right. H Radio 223, part timers, the radio interview, 103. So that's coming from Nash and Cullinan, the Next Level Radio, Chapter 4, 4.2.7, page 156 to 159. Not a very long chapter lesson today for this for this aspect of interviews, but I do want to play some. I want to play one of my interviews and one of Nicole Silver's interviews. Not the whole thing because it's quite long, that takes place over an hour for one of our features each, particularly because I want you to see how an interview can be interpreted as a feature that runs. And of course, because, man, it's 919 family. So obviously, I'm going to promote the station just a little bit there. I'm going to punt us. It's just a smashing job, right? Okay, so before we get into the first one, which is I'm going to play you Nicole's just a moment. Let's go through some of the slides. Let's talk about approaching interviews in a productive and a constructive and effective way. Every station obviously has a policy or a guide for interviews, how they take place on air, who should you speak to, what should you speak about, what things you shouldn't speak about, right? And here's an example of such a policy. An interview should be considered a feature and should have all the characteristics of a feature, beginning, middle, and an end. In other words, with an exoskeleton that is structured with a direction in mind, right? Because you're having the person in studio or on the line there for contextually relevant purposes, right? Reasons. So we're not just going to chat to anyone and everyone. At some point, we could. Maybe if you're on air long enough, you would speak to everyone that you possibly can, but just make sure that they are there for the correct reasons. So we look at stuff that either is topical, it's contextually relevant to the listener's lifestyle. Um, Again, we can kind of place it in terms of a timeline factor. So maybe it was a then and a now thing. It could be new music that is being released. It could be a new film, a new stage play, whatever it may be, right? So it could be, in other words, part of the recreational lifestyle of a listener. Many different aspects as to why it always will come down to the listener. And coming up, we're going to revisit the composite, right? And give a hypothetical listener who's interested in certain things to see what could we possibly talk to them about, right? So all interviews must be target market related, all of them. And as I mentioned before in previous lessons as well, that if you just don't have, if let's say it even doesn't fit your show, right, in the day, or the day of the week, time of day of the week, then really give it to another presenter on the lineup or in the lineup that's going to match their show, their particular sub-target market, right, within the station's format. And rather just pass it on. Place it somewhere where it's going to have a better effect, right? Most radio stations would have a policy that all interviews need to be approved by the program director. This is a lot of PT, right? It's a lot of admin. Eventually, the program director or the program department will say, look, we trust you enough now. You know, obviously, the format of the station, you know how things go here, you know what it is that we shouldn't speak about. And so we trust you to do the right thing, right? When we do have someone that might be a little bit risque, might be a little bit taboo, might be a little bit out of kind of out of scope, maybe, particularly musician wise, right? We would have to then go past the music department, program department, to see whether or not we can actually have them, maybe do something with them. For example, like perhaps maybe create a podcast only that could be on these stations, obviously digital platforms, etc. It all depends, right? Or we could, when I say podcast, it also be directed to an independent podcast that is obviously part of the station brand. So many different options that we can actually do. But again, just remember, don't just talk to everyone about anything at any one particular time. That doesn't have any relation. Those three things don't have any relation to one another. Right. So XFM's primary target market is 16 to 24 years old. The LSM, so previous, obviously the previous measurement that we would use in our ratings. From the BRC and before that, obviously SOF. So the LSM is about money that people would earn, 7 to 10. As a high demographic over there, very rich, I would say, young people that have money to spend, should I say. Urban South Africans who are trendy, progressive, and aspirational, which means the following. Here are the things that they would be interested without even looking at that first. Immediately, you can think of fashion, lifestyle, like high-end fashion, high-end lifestyle, definitely like concerts, definitely having a good time. These are young people over here, different experiences, and also things that matter to like a young adult, like mental awareness, independence, and those type of things, right? So all the interviews and topics should reflect a strategic objective to serve these particular listeners. So with regards to social responsibility, we could go across the board and show different topics like HIV, AIDS, and children's mandates, so their rights and where they sit amongst, I don't know, I say society, right? Never mind their own families and support structures. Interviews related to entertainment and music, sport, current affairs must strictly reflect the interests of this particular audience. In other words, if you're going to do entertainment and music, you've got to interview artists that are being listened to, consumed by, supported, and fans of by this particular demographic over here. Same to do with sports, like the sports they are interested in, current affairs. It's if you're young, it doesn't mean that you're not interested in the world around you, but it is in what aspects. So what kind of angles are we going to include with current affairs that would make it relevant to this particular listen, right? So here's again a hypothetical listener from XFM, right? It's also a hypothetical station. I know we have one in South Africa, but that is for the Khoisan people. So let's not get the two confused, right? So who is Joe? This is a typical composite listener, right? So what is a composite? Just to kind of revise as to what a composite is, we're trying to describe this particular listener, what they're interested in, what makes them tick, what do they think about, and what are the approaches and kind of the impacts of social media in their life, their kind of alter egos maybe, what are their concerns with friends and family, right, and peer pressure, etc. There's so many things that we can actually talk about. We map it out, we break it up into its finest details, and then we go and we approach all the content on the radio station, be it from adverts to competitions to music to actual content itself, and also even the DJs that we choose and the shows that we construct based on this particular composite listener. So, you know where this is going. We have the composite listener. We know exactly what to chat about. And so it comes back to interviews. So, meet Joe. She's Joe, she or he, could be a she or he, right, is young, energetic, and passionate about South Africa and the world in which he lives, right? So Joe is a huge fan of the world of popular music entertainment, and he's media and tech savvy and always on trend. So Joe understands his responsibilities as a young South African and global citizen. Um, he's just give me a second just here. I just want to get something. Give me a second here. Give me I am And back there. All right, thanks. So we were just saying Joe understands his responsibilities as a young South African and a global citizen, right? And he lives boldly with these responsibilities. In other words, he's passionate about relationships, sex, friends, family, school, work, and ultimately play, right? That's the youth perspective, right? To enjoy life a little bit more free willingly and have less responsibilities at that particular point in your life. Joe knows what he wants and he knows what he has to create his own future, right? or has to do maybe to create his own future. Joe loves XFM because XFM is a tribe, a group of people who talk to him, with him, and about him. And Joe also uses XFM to be the first of his friends to be in the know on the latest relevant news and trends. That is the who is who and the what is what, right? So with XFM, Joe is encouraged to live boldly and to amplify lives. Okay, so nice. It's detailed enough for us to know that we can definitely pivot some ideas or some content, some features, and again, music, etc. Right, from what this particular little composite of Joe is defined as. Okay. All right. So every radio station should compose a composite listener, definitely to help present to the correct person, right? So let's have a look at some applications. The famous talk show host Larry King said the best interviews are conversations, right? Conversations, as obvious as that seems, that means bidirectional, right? Or multi-directional, depending on how many people are involved in that particular conversation. Like you would sit at a table and talk to a person at a restaurant, at home, like in a social environment, whatever it is, right? You're talking to someone so that people can get involved, like be part of that conversation, passively or actively, right? So your question should come from your guests' stories and not from your notes. So I have said before, you have to have a basis. You can't go in unprepared. That makes no sense, right? But you have to follow the cue of the guest responses, right? And obviously, you've got to set them up. Like the better you set them up, the better the responses are going to be, and that great rich interaction is going to be like. XFM shows I do many interviews on air. Many times these interviews are not properly researched, produced, and executed, and are usually very boring for the listener. Right. So now we've got to do something about that to make Joe happy. Usually it's a case of guest A is available and they have many followers on Twitter. So let's get them to come in. What's wrong with that, right? Just because they have followers on Twitter or X right now, right? Or Instagram, TikTok, doesn't mean anything actually, because one, does the listener even know about them? Do they know about them, but also care about what it is that they actually got to say? Like, are they doing something that's relevant to society, relevant to that community? Again, that listener that is busy listening to that particular interview, right? And there's so many ways that we can again choose the wrong guest or the right guest for the wrong audience, right? Wrong guest for the right audience. So we need to again approach this with obviously some thought, right? Some strategic thought. Anyway, let me do a Google search about guest A and get some what we believe to be good questions, right? Um, in which our listeners will be interested. Then guest A comes in and we ask them this question. This at best leads to some kind of mediocre interview because one, you also went to go and Google search questions where you should. I mean, if you are going to use some AI generated questions, whatever it is, use it as a springboard. Just get a good train of thought. Definitely do your research with any particular guest that does come in. Again, you also quite like um, when we were doing call screening, right? You have got to you've got to also start at a particular point in this particular interviewee's story, their journey, right? To um, make this particular interview again relevant, interesting, and obviously kind of well entertaining at the end of the day. Not kind of just fully entertaining at the end of the day. Yes, Google, you must go research, you must Google search, yes, but you can't just pick and copy and paste generic questions that this person's also been asked a million times, right? We're still obviously remembering that this person is actually not the right person to chat to. So it was going to be a fail at the end of the day from the beginning, from the very get-go there, right? What are you supposed to do? Well, one, obviously pick a better guest, as I said. And again, do all those other things that I've just mentioned. Go there, think more deeply about direct questioning that can spark great conversations. So don't just ask yes, no questions or close-ended questions where you know also that kind of information is available on the net. It's freely available to the public. And so they know that information already. You're going to be someone that's going to be like, okay, if I have to ask again, I'm going to repeat this again. If you're going to ask base questions for context, right? For context for an upcoming, right, or a follow-up question, that's okay, right? But you can't base at all your interview and your approach on that so that basic approach. It's just going to be snoring, yawning, and tuning out, right? So we should want to be excellent, not mediocre. At any one point, to thrive for excellence and to compete with the best interviews in the world. Our competition is not only other FM stations, but also YouTube, Instagram, and all other channels that our listeners are going for or going to for content. Before we get to the six phase approach to interview prep, I'm going to actually stop that share and I'm going to play um, part of Nicole's. So Nicole does a feature, the grapevine, right? Just quickly get to it. That's me. I'll get to mine in just a moment. Right. She does a feature every Tuesday, I think. Nicole De Silva, once again, on the drive at 909. Grapevine Connect, right, which aims to again bring people that are within different industries, right, to the forefront, have conversations on how you can be obviously empowered to build like your own steps forward that kind of like as a professional, but also learn from quote unquote the best. Let's listen to some of Nicole's interview.
This is Grapevine Connect, learning from real talk with leaders in their field to help you level up.
Welcome to it. It's the 14th episode of Grapevine Connect. Today we are joined by Tracy van Ginkel, who's the Contracts and Operations Manager of Lions Rugby. She's been in this position for the last decade. She was at University of Johannesburg and was part of the sports admin, but now currently Lions Rugby Company. That's huge. I mean, even I know about Lions Rugby, and I'm not a sports person. She's been vital and pivotal in a lot of the different roles that they have at Lions, specifically when it comes to all the company team operations, which could be absolutely anything, because operations for sports people, I mean, who knows what that is? We'll find out. But she was also part of the international senior team for 2 seasons and accompanied the Emirates Lions on their inaugural Vodacom United Rugby Championships tour to Europe and the UK 2021 and 2022, which is pretty freaking cool. So let's give it up for Tracy van Ginkel. As always, I'm not alone. Co-host Mike Hewen, who's an agency owner, is here. Good to have you with us, Michael.
Hi, Nix. Hi, everybody. Nice to be here.
And I'm sure you are dying to get into this. Mike is sports mad. There's another word, an Afrikaans word that I wanted to use, but we can't because it's radio.
I was going to say.
Yeah, no, don't. Get me fired.
It's a family show.
No, yeah, exactly. So I guess where to start with this. This is what you wanted to do. You studied sports administration, sports management. Sports management.
Yeah.
And you wanted to manage sports people. What was going through your mind at the time?
Next, it's actually quite a funny story. So I have a brother who's very much into sports as well, sports scientist specifically, and I wanted to follow in his footsteps and started sports psychology. And I met my professor in my 3rd year wondering now what I was going to do. And he said to me straight out, you're not going to touch people. You're not going to be a massage therapist. You're not going to be a sports scientist. You need to go delegate people. And I was quite shaken up. I was like, no, but this is the career I've chosen, seeing all these people do these wonderful things. I'm going to go that route. And today he was actually very, very right. In the situation now I find myself in, I actually want nothing to do with on-the-field stuff and do manage outside. So sports psychology, honors in sports management, masters in sports management. So specifically looking at strategic structures and operations. So anything we say is off the field, outside the 4 white lines, is my job.
That is freaking cool. Do you have to deal with the coaches a lot? Because, I mean, if you hiring and firing sportsmen for the team, you can't just decide it yourself. It needs to sort of work for the team, and then they have to have, like, how does it work? Like, are there KPIs? You have not kicked the ball enough times, so therefore you are not a team player, therefore you are out, and you're like how does it work when you are managing like the performance of sports people versus like, because for like office people it's easy, but for sports people it's like maybe having an off season, maybe having an off day, but like also people get angry if their team's not doing well.
So when I started, it was actually very difficult being a woman coming into this portfolio, this industry. It's changed a lot in the last 4 years. Currently, the coaches and I do get on, and what I've learned is you almost have to make yourself indispensable. So they need me just as much as I need them. And if I can give them what they need in the sense of a player recruitment, then they need to also understand where I'm coming from operations or a contracting point of view. How the contracting works is there's a PROCOM, we call it PROCOM, it's a professional committee. The owner will sit on there, the CEO and the head coach and myself, and they talk rugby, and then it comes to me towards the budget and where it's going. The coach will then say, I want a player A, and then it's my job to go find them through agents, where they are, what they're doing, are they in Japan, are they in the UK, what their contract status is, get the figures that they're looking at, which can be anything, and then bring it back to the PROCOM and say, okay guys, this is where the player is, this is how much he's going to cost, are we going for it or are we not going for it? And then that's where it goes from. From a performance perspective, you're looking at a coach understanding a play, which is very specific. So a coach will look at performance in the sense of stats, but he also knows what the player can do and can't do. And a lot of it we say as players reach their roof. It's inevitable that certain players will only get to a certain level. And then there's players that can get further, but then just don't have the ability in the sense of mental ability, emotional ability, those type of things. They can have all the skills in the world, but if you're not mentally strong, it can also, the industry can eat you up alive. I think that's very important, and people do, they don't understand that there's a massive aspect to that. BMT was what we used to call it in sport. So I think there's
I know
a lot
that
of
one.
things.
Sorry, it took me a while. Big match temperament.
There we go.
There we go. High five me. We.
Nice, Nick.
So I think that's the big things that people don't understand. And it's not, we call it the armchair coaches that sit there and shout and don't understand. But there's a lot of things in the background that need to happen for a team to perform. And it's on the day you have to make what's the best decisions are there.
Sure.
But I mean, you're managing injuries, you're managing downtime of players that are like out of your control, so you've got to control that as well.
We'll
Does
try.
that fall in? Well, try as much as you can.
Yeah, so at the Lions Rugby, we have obviously departments, and we have a massive medical department, and I don't think people realize that as well, but we have 2 full-time doctors, 4 physios, 6 massage therapists, a full-on biokinetic system. So you have to manage it, but the challenge is to how do you take a player out and rehab them in order for them to be ready for the next game, or do you take them out longer for them to be ready for the following game? What is more
like
important?
the whole season.
Exactly. So that time management and return to play, the protocols in that are very important, because the industry at the moment, you have less players because they cost more money. So you have a salary cap. So there is obviously rules and protocols that you have to have within the system. So getting a player on the field, that player needs to stay on the field. You cannot rush something, because if you rush it, you're going to then almost take the player out longer, which is the coach's worst nightmare.
I wanted to ask Trace, you mentioned earlier that being a woman in this, and I don't like talking about the woman thing in a male-dominated industry, blah-de-blah-de-blah, but I did want to ask if you know of any other woman who maybe helped you to see yourself in the position that you're in, because sometimes we need to see somebody who's doing what we're doing or what we want to do to help us visualize it better. Are there any others that you know of?
So currently in my position, no, but we always talk about the networking abilities, and I agree with, that's why I think Mark and I have met through that system. At university, I had a very strong professor. She taught me that, if you want to do something, you go for it, you study hard, and that was one person who really, put my mind in going, okay, well, what is the opportunities here? Where can I go? And then I also had a director within the sports franchise, or the bureau that we used to call it, where I started working. And she also said, the limitations of where a woman is needs to end. So we always had the stigma of this is what you can do. And having those 2 people, obviously in your fundamental academic years, telling you that you can do better or you don't have to be limited, pushed me to be where I am today. And I think I've also had the best of knowing people. 100% it's what you know, but it's who you know in this industry. Sport is that. So I think it has been, two very strong women who have experienced a lot that have given me the courage to push into this industry. I think that is where I definitely learnt it.
Yeah, I mean, it's thinking bigger. It's like what's possible, anything really. So I like that.
Yeah, definitely. And I think being a person in the industry, I don't like to say that I'm a woman in the industry because I know I work just as hard. Yeah, so I think that's where I put it, is make myself indispensable and be very good at what I'm doing.
Right. So really cool. There's so many great things that I can say about the interview, just because. But we'll do some basic ones, right? So you can note that obviously Nicole has great temperament, great pace. She's very well spoken, which is not like a lot of us, right? We're a little bit more rough around the edges, quite like myself. And yeah, but very well spoken. You can tell that immediately in that the beginning monologue for the interview, that sets up kind of that context of why Tracy is on the show today. Researched, well, obviously read out, right? But it doesn't sound so mechanical or clinical. She goes again. Goes straight into like why Tracy is here and why, let's understand where she's coming from. The great interaction with the co-host. I keep forgetting his name. It's fine, but the co-host is there. They're not talking over one another. Each person has something of value to say. Whenever you've got something to say in an interview, one, obviously don't crash vocals, don't talk over one another unless it makes it makes for the atmosphere in some other way, right? And you can recover from it. I say recover. You can actually you can hold your own, right, as to why that just sounds natural and it's why it's acceptable. A great, obviously, interviewer is constantly present, right? So in other words, is laser focused on that particular moment, what they are saying, what they are asking, what the person is responding to, because like we heard there with Nicole, like she doesn't understand certain things, or she gets it and it's clear, and she makes her more personable as well. She snaps her fingers, whatever it may be, little nuances of her own there. That just make the time actually goes. I think we played about 10 minutes or so, which is what I actually want to do with both interviews. To show you that when someone is speaking with purpose, right, and there's interesting things that they are saying, then it's worth listening to more and more and more. It's a long it looks like a long interview, but it's obviously played over an hour, which is what we are encouraged to do at the station. We normally run content for about an hour, and then move on to new content in the next hour and new content in the next hour after that, right? So, all the things that we have been chatting about, as I'm going to stop that, just share over there. Let's get into the steps of the phases, the 6 phase approach to interview prep. And then we can close up with the chat that I have on my wealth and health feature with Dr. Elena K. Right. So the 6 phase approach to interview preparation is it's guaranteed to lead to an excellent interview. The magic comes from phase 1 and 4, which you can already kind of predict that 5 and 6 are kind of the executions, right? It's all about the planning. It's really all about the planning of how you make that moment come alive, right? Which is, I mean, that's prep's about, right? So, okay, quality test. No, I'm not sure. Yeah, I did mention it before in terms of call screening. The same way we can not get an interesting, like a not an interesting caller, is that we can also not get an interesting not not interesting, should I say, guest, right? They may seem great on paper, like when you look at them in black and white. When you talk to them, they might not have the best demeanor for radio, right? They're not cool, calm, collected, and knowledgeable, and kind of like again confident, and that kind of ownership goes through, and it doesn't make anyone feel uncomfortable. I really I must just want to rehash particularly the one that I did with Greenpeace and I did with Doctors Without Borders, right? Two separate interviews, obviously independent on different shows, both, but particularly the Greenpeace lady, was so she was so bad, right? And you're saying to me, "Oh, Chris, why did you put it to air?" Because when I did the pre-screening interview, chatted to her. She's also the digital and communications manager. She should. You say, oh, well, she obviously knows how to communicate, right? She obviously does press junkets, press releases, talks to the press in general, communication within the company. And she was great. Like I said, she was great when I chatted to her off air. So I was like, cool, let's go with this. And she was very comfortable. She did say, look, I am very nervous because I've never been on air. And I said to her, don't worry. Like, come in with your points that you want to get across. This is why I sent to the interview beforehand. That's why I do the pre-screen, the pre-interview beforehand, which is going to see in different phases. But yo, when we got there, got to the on-air segment. Whoa, she was she was petrified, right? And like she was shaking, her mouth went dry, like you could hear it, the quivering, whatever it is. And I empathize for her and I sympathize, empathize, whatever it may be. I did what I did like in response to that is I kept it very short, right? Because I saw she's not getting a little bit more comfortable from, let's say, question to question. I was like, okay, cool. Let's not make her feel more uncomfortable. Can't really play this one outside the box and keep it short. And then went out like ended the interview to save as much as I could on air, right? So you will get certain, like I mean, there are going to be like certain cases where it doesn't really work out. It seemed like it was going to, but predominantly all of that can be avoided by doing the phases, the quality test. Be selective of the guests that show books in order to get the best result. Right. So ask the following four questions when you are choosing a particular guest. Are they big stars with a company like Universal Studios or high target appeal? Can they tell great stories? Does one of their show players have a high interest in the guests? And will this create great entertainment, right? Are they great? Are they a great interview, right? Even if they are not a huge name, so don't always think everyone can be made great. I'm saying depending on what it is that they've got to say, why you're choosing them, selecting them, putting them on air. With all those kind of check boxes that we said there, are they knowledgeable? Are they confident? Are they kind of expert professionals in what it is that you're currently trying to talk about, right? Um, and that is the reason why you would go and say, okay, they're going to make for a great interview, not because they don't have to be famous at all. That's by no means criteria, right? Will they set up one of the players on the show in some kind of way, right? Pre-production, what we do is obviously want to prep a little bit, right? Spend at least 60 minutes preparing the interview, kind of than the actual length of the interview. So at least longer, 60 minutes longer, excuse me. Remember to read biographies, get up to date with a person's career, where they are currently, what their current activity is on social media, digitally. Like, do they have any particular statements that they've made that are going to be useful within, let's say, planning this particular interview? Was there crowd response? Is there great following or support or something unusual that's happening? Have they released a book? Did they release a podcast series? Did they recently feature on a certain television show? Whatever it may be, right? You're trying to track their current activity, where they are currently, not where they've come from, right? That's just to give you some context and perspective on how it is to talk to this person and what it is that we might bring in, but obviously, more so importantly, what they currently are doing. Develop a story arc. That is a reason for having the guest in studio, in which you create a touch point. Right, right. So again, that relevant, that particular of particulars of why it is at the core that this person is here in studio or chatting to you on the line. So this could be a fun element, and no other interviewer would do it. So in other words, you can again, or you should look at the unique way of interacting with this person, right, to make it more entertaining. For example, you could have a fun activity such as a game. You could like surprise them by putting their mom on the line, or their previous boss, or their first boss, or their grade school teacher, or whatever it may be, right? So you can do many things to kind of really spice up that interview. Again, give it a holistic approach, and etc. etc. Phase three: conduct a pre-interview interview. You must talk to them beforehand. You have to, because again, you have to see whether there's rapport as well, so that you and them gel well on air. And you can also, again, you're getting a better idea of their temperament, their personality, what they do know, what they're comfortable in asking or answering, should I say. You can ask the precursor questions, it's pre-interview interview questions, where you might think that they have done something. You want to maybe clarify certain facts, certain rumors, certain whatever it is, stories that have been written about them. It doesn't matter, right? Like, you want to check with them beforehand to see, okay, this is going to be a great question here. This is going to be a great question. Then you're going to go and filter out the better questions from what you prepped before, to the obviously, from the rubbish, right? Okay. So the better questions are the ones that we always want to actually ask. So it's a foreign concept for South African radio industry. It's weird when people don't do a pre-interview interview. It makes no sense, because this person can be completely volatile to your on-air product and completely destroy everything. And also, again, rapport. So let's say you phone them first time, like while you are on air, and you just don't click, or you don't have any, like I said, again, there's no context, and it's a bit manic, right? It's going to come through as cold and callous, like on air, and it's not going to sound great. All right. Anyway, so it makes, for me, it makes no sense, like, to not have the pre-interview interview. It obviously avoids a ton load of things that could go wrong, right? So it should happen obviously telephonically at least 24 hours before the actual interview. Let's say, obviously, for it to be practical, for, let's say, a weekday show, you are going to tend to want to speak to them, like, at the very least 24, 48 hours beforehand. But a good producer also knows that when you do come across someone, like as a person of interest, right, and they are only relevant maybe in a week and a half's time, or on a Friday, or on a Monday, or when, let's say, elections go out, or whatever it is, right? You would book them for that particular time. Maybe if they're not available, you could pre-interview them, right? I'm saying you could pre-record the interview and have that obviously set up for that particular day. I'm speaking a lot here, and there's a lot of things to obviously take note of, but it is a craft, right? The pre-interview interview can be done by the producer or the actual interviewer. Again, good rapport is so that's always recommended. But the producer, their job is to go and set up everything for that guest and for that presenter, right? So that you can meet as well. Ask what the phase two questions here, right? So, in other words, the stuff that you have prepped, and then again, like I say, go and test them, do a litmus test whether it's going to work or not, and get some more clarity on certain points. So ask the guests about how they feel about the story arc, the touch point, right, and the fun element that you might have developed, right. Again, I like the surprising factor. Again, also, if you do have something that is structured like a game, you would want to tell them, look, I am going to put you through like a 30-second quiz, just so that you can be prepared. Don't worry if you don't know. I just want the real reaction from you. And it's not going to, also, please also, like, kind of disclaim that you're not going to attack them. You're not going to surprise them in a way that's going to embarrass them in a bad way, not in a fun way. You're gonna give yourself a bad reputation, and that person can also, I mean, they can also take you to the BCCSA if they want to. Anyway, keep notes of what questions have the potential for great answers or stories that you can actually obviously bounce off and take different, like I say, different routes, follow up questions, and then obviously, like, take out the mediocre questions. Gauge their interest in the story arc and see what they think, develop further. Let's go to phase four, develop a game plan. So then construct the interview, reconstruct that prep that you've had there, right? So you're going to go back to it. You're going to, again, take out, like I say, all the stuff that is irrelevant, something that we can actually bring in as part of setting up a question, as instead of wasting some time with the kind of the obvious of, and again, the time spent of having the interviewee sit and blah 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 yakety schmackety, right? Okay, so we would go and then go and polish that interview prep. Make sure that you have at least three great stories that you want to get out of the guest. So if it's a full-bodied interview, right? So three cool ways that the interview can pivot, right? We have a new train of thought, new line of thinking, new information, new surprising angles, right? Develop a plan of how the conversation is going to run. Plan the open-ended questions that you're going to ask so that you can know what you can follow up with. Okay. All right. So I'm going to do phase 5 and phase 6, and I'm going to play you then mine. Welcome the guests on air. Do you see now how phase 1 to 4 is where you will go and you will create a situation where magic can happen, right? Through all those four phases is how your execution is going to come alive, right? Fully dependent on that. So the interviewer must sit down with a guest before the interview, tell them what the three stories are that they want to get them to tell. Make them feel welcome. In other words, make interview enjoyable. Obviously, give them like coffee, water, if there is food available. Tell them they should grab something to eat, whatever it is. Obviously, no drinking and eating in studio, and they've got to. I mean, they've got to be like ready and steady to go, right? Have some merchandise available for them if there is some, so obviously some swag from the station as well, and be focused by focusing on the human side in this manner. You're going to make them feel more comfortable. They're not going to be nervous on air. And again, there's going to be this nice flow of conversation there. Okay. Last phase 6, execute. So finally, you can execute, carry out this interview, keeping the following techniques in mind. 1, entertain first and sell second. A lot of people do come on air to come and sell their products, their services, their songs, whatever it is. But you can't focus on that. You can't make the interview just about that or allow them to have free advertising, kind of like unashamedly, right? It's not. We're not unless we're bringing you in because you released a new book, right? And it is a bestseller or whatever it may be. We can talk about the book. Sure, it is available here, whatever it may be, but right, we're able to talk around the core of that, the kind of like the product or the service, whatever it may be, right? So that we can avoid blatant advertising as well. Take a page from the late night talk shows and discuss what your guest is promoting during the last part of that interview. So make it clear to publicists, handlers, and so on. The show will promote the guest product and that the goal is to have entertaining and fun conversation. It's going to benefit the guest, right? Regardless of how famous they are. Surprise your guests, as I said them, make it a really refreshing experience for them so that they say, oh, this is so worth coming through. Loved it. When they say to you things like, I loved that you asked that question. Oh, I haven't thought about that yet. Oh, that's a great way of saying things. And they can respond. Then you know what this interview is going well. Avoid questions that already provide answers, right? Things that you already know that everyone knows. Avoid yes no questions, as I said to you. Rather ask open ended questions that create that liberty of conversation, right? Ask sensitive questions deeper into the interview, right? So once you've got a bit of their trust, you've got that flow going, then let's get into something a bit more deeper. Give them a second. Be empathetic, like I say, be a human being so that they can feel safe enough to answer to their best ability, right? Use question clusters. So these can be an effective device to help you delve deeper into someone's personality. A series of questions on one topic are best asked one at a time so the guest is not overwhelmed and they don't not answer that question as well, right? One thought at a time, right? One thought, one point at a time. But let's close this up. Often guests are not available for pre-interview interviews, right? Okay, but you must push for this, right? Do not let the guest control you. It's your show. You're giving them a platform. You're giving them time. Don't be flustered. Don't be starstruck. Don't like if you're talking to the most important in the world, important person in the world. Excuse me, to the least important person, quote unquote, contextually, as the world might see them, they're important to you. I'm saying on that show, it's your show, and you're providing them with a platform. So be in control, man. Don't lose your cool. Pre-recording will mean that you're able to get the best out of a guest if you can do that. As I said to you, right? You can also cut and edit the best elements, right? But you can't always shy away from live interviews. It's part of your skill set. You got to know how to do that. If there's breaking news, if there's someone that is talking to you internationally at a specific moment, you've got to know how to run live interviews as well. Pre-recorded, nice. Obviously, when it's environmental, like it's effective, like you need to be at an event or they are at a like what is it when they what's it called when they are debuting music, but only to the press, for example. Like that's different, right? Like you need to pre-record those moments because you can't always get them like in studio. Right. Okay. That's the end of the lesson. I'm going to stop that there and I'm going to play you a bit from my, like I say, it's called Wealth in Health, where a different presenters, myself and Miss Nicole. I was going to say Nicole Fox. It's a much older presenter, Nicole De Silva. All right. Wealth in Health with Dr. Elena K. Kolokotronis. Right. And we are chatting over on such a very big, broad topic, right? But quite specifically debunking dumps.
It's the Sunday Revolution on 919. You're listening to 919, where you can feel good anytime. It's Creason, Be Brave, Mama. On the way, the brand new song from Beyonce. And some boom shaka, just to throw it back for you, man. This is the Sunday Revolution on 919. With you till 3 o'clock today. My name's Chris, and we're welcoming in studio Dr. Elena Kolokotronis, Elena K. You can go find her at Elena-K, just the letter.com. She is our in-house nutritionist. She's fantastic in so many different ways. But we bring you in for this one fantastic thing that you are really great at, leading your your own community and the world around you. I know that you are overseas quite a lot in better lives, I suppose. When it comes to like food, nutrition, mental health, and wealth, when it comes in all together. Today, why you are here? Oh, sidebar, are you okay?
I'm so well, and I'm very happy to be here. Thank you.
Listen, okay, so today I wanted to talk about debunking diet myths. I know it's so generic, but it's so relevant.
Very.
Everyone, constantly, all of us,
Every one of us. Every last one.
want to try out, have tried out, are busy trying out something or other, just to shed off a quick weight buck, right?
That was the clue there. Quick couple of kilos. Yeah, it's a problem.
You know what? This is what I constantly battle with. Many years ago when I was like 18, 19 years old, I decided I'm going to get a personal trainer because I wanted to learn a little bit more about like how to manage my own weight loss and obviously muscle growth, whatever it may be, right? And this dude said to me, if you go to gym, obviously consistently, right? Eat healthy, whatever it means, maybe 3 to 4 kilos a year is what you will lose.
Okay.
Is that the truth? Because he broke my spirits, eh? I was like, well, I don't need you for that long. That's for damn sure.
Yeah, so first of all, the alarm bells, I think, are the age that you started. That's quite young still.
Okay.
So it is quite young. I mean, there's nothing wrong with going to the gym and lifting some weights. But if it's something that you're doing, how many times a week were you doing that?
Back then, it was 3 to 4. Back then. Now it's almost every day. Not to brag, but
No,
genuinely
but also
that's
we're not
obsession.
18, 19 anymore, and you do need to start some kind of weight training the older you get. We get that, that's fine.
Yeah.
I think that he might have been mistaken.
Okay, what can you? I'm saying if you do move into a dietary lifestyle, so a good diet
Yeah.
that you are incorporating obviously into your consistent meals, whatever it may be, what would you lose? Let's say over a year. And you do go to gym, you do cardio,
Yeah.
whatever it may be.
So, because the problem there is that we have to look at the person that we're discussing here. It's a very broad answer that I'm going to give you now because it's not specific enough. So I get what you're asking. I can answer it as best as this. We have to look at the person that we're working with. Do they have a lot of excess weight? Is it just to gain muscle? Do they have a clinical illness? Is it a male? Is it a female? How often they're going to the gym? What kind of, are they doing cardio? Are they doing weights? What are they doing? So it's quite difficult to give you an exact answer.
Okay, let me help out here. When people come to you
Yes.
and they say, I want to lose weight quick,
Yes.
because that's what it is. And quick, I do understand, is, I suppose, maybe your own perspective on what quick might be, right? But I do want to lose it quickly, right? And what do they ask you, or what do they say? I'm trying this,
I'll
or I
tell
want
you.
to do this.
I'll tell you exactly what happens. The patient comes. I hate the word patient. The person comes.
Yeah.
Let's say it's a woman, and she says to me, "I have excess weight. The GP has said that I am obese. I've got cholesterol, high cholesterol. I've done every diet that there is, and I need to lose weight. I'm going to Greece, for example, in August, and I want to lose 15 kilos." So what happens there is we automatically just gather that diets, I'm sorry to say this, diets don't work.
Yeah.
Diets are also not the solution to the problem. They're not. A diet has a shelf life. You reach your 10 kilos and then,
Yeah.
okay. And diet also has a very, very bad reaction to your emotional well-being and your psychology.
How?
So I'll tell you. So in the 80s, the doctor came up with a theory of the white bear. And what the theory basically was they put a bunch of participants in a room and they said, whatever you do, don't think about the white bear.
I've heard
And
this,
every
yeah.
single one of them thought of the white bear. If I come and I say to you, no sugar, no carbs,
Yeah.
no bread, no milk, no dairies, no nothing, that's exactly what you're going to crave, and it's exactly what you think your body's telling you at once. Why? Because you're not ruled by your brain, you're ruled by your mind.
But what do you do then?
I'll tell you now, diet equals in any person's
up,
mind.
Chris.
Diet equals in any person's mind restriction. Restriction is unpleasant. There's an aversion to it. You don't really want to do it. Okay. So what happens is the patient will come and I'll tell them, I don't do diets.
Yeah.
I don't, because I'm not here to see you into the next 3 months with your 10 kilos less on a beach in Mykonos. I'm here to stand you in good stead for the next 30 years. I don't want to be a doctor where you keep coming back every year. I want to be that person that you're going to come to, and I'm going to help you
Right.
get to where you need to be lifelong.
Do people then say, I'll phone
had
you
it.
back?
I've had it, yeah.
And then they don't.
I've had people say to me,
Ghost you.
do you have a pill or an injection that can help me not eat, or that can help me eat whatever I want and then I still lose weight? And I tell them, when you come back to reality, when you actually have an idea of being skinny is not being healthy, then maybe come back if I'm definitely not the person for you.
Okay, great. So Dr. Elena K in studio for Wealth in Health. We're talking about diet myths and debunking them. Stay here, 909.
Happiness is just a song away. 911.
You can feel it any time on the Sunday Revolution, 26 minutes past 1 o'clock. Wealth in Health with Dr. Elena K. Once a month at the beginning of every month, just because for somewhat other reason it's fresh. You're fresh. Thank you for being here.
Thanks for having me.
Always love it and very much appreciate it as well. You can follow Dr. Elena at Elena K, so ELENIAKAY on Instagram, where you're very, very active. And if you do just want to again go to a site, Elena-K, just the letter.com. We're talking about diet myths. Okay, let's first talk directly about everything that everyone wants to know, which is all those terrible diets that people go on. You named a whole bunch of them as well.
did.
Go ahead.
Okay, so the thing is that we have never been bombarded with more diets in the history of humankind, and yet we've never been more ill and diseased in our lives. So the thing is, I think if you're someone who has a little bit of logic, if you just sit back and you take a look and you see, diets serve a purpose for a while. Like we said earlier, it's very easy to reach a target of losing 5 kilos, 10 kilos, and then, so you've lost your 5, 10 kilos. Do you know how unhealthy it is to yo-yo weight up and down?
What happens?
So basically what happens is you're training your entire body, how it metabolizes food, how it uses food, when some people, how it stores food. You're training your body to not know how to balance that.
Because eventually you eat like a piece of mealie and you gain 3 kilos quickly.
Because, Chris, that's a real thing.
Yeah.
A lot of people will say, I've been on all these diets and this last diet was working, and after 2 weeks of losing 4 kilos, I kind of just stopped losing weight, and then I just picked up 6 kilos. And then no one understands why that is. And why that is that depending on how restrictive the diet was, the body does go in. A lot of people will argue this. And there's no storage mode, there's no survival mode. That's nonsense.
Yeah.
There is. The body doesn't know. The body's a machine. It's the most brilliant thing there is. I mean, we cut ourselves, it bleeds, it stops bleeding, and the skin closes again. I mean, how we feed ourselves, and we have to remember what you put in your mouth in the form of food every day. It's not for a while. It's a couple of times a day, every day, for your entire life.
What's some of the worst ones right now? So the most dangerous.
I'm going to get a lot of flack for this. The most dangerous is the water fast, the juice fast diets.
What do you do in?
So basically what they do is they don't eat for a certain amount of days, 7 days, 5 days, only drink water, or they don't eat for 5 or 6 days and only have 3 or 4 juices a day, and then don't understand why their blood pressure dropped so and why they're fainting everywhere. But
don't you? I know this obviously is a no, Chris, but don't you die? I'm being honest. Isn't it's something like you can
it's
be
water. It's water that you can't go without for, I think it's 2 days. It's not food.
Oh,
Not
yeah,
food.
the food,
No.
and the sleep thing can kill
The
you.
sleep thing can kill you, not food.
Right,
But,
okay.
But the thing is that you have people that survive that and then feel euphoric and think, I haven't eaten for 7 days or 5 days. I've only lived on water. I feel alive. I feel great. There's a method to why they feel like that. But then what happens is some people around the world push it and push it and push it, and then what happens? Organs start to collapse. They get very sick, and some of them just don't recover. Kidneys, liver function, digestive function doesn't recover after that, and there was no need to do that in the first place.
Not to, like, obviously, whatever, beat a dead horse here, but paleo diet, cabbage diet, blood type diet, what are these?
So the blood type diet one is interesting. I'll tell you why. There's a lot of people that try to go against the findings. And the findings were basically that on your blood sits an antigen, and that antigen, BABO, has an effect on your digestion. That's not really the case. Your blood type doesn't really have an effect on how you digest and metabolize food. However, when they did studies, clinical studies with people according to their blood type, they all lost a significant amount of weight, and a lot of people that were on medications, sleeping pills, cholesterol medication, their bodies responded so well to eating according to their blood type that the medications weren't needed anymore. However...
Yeah, because I'm trying to keep track here what's fine and what's not ever.
Yeah, they weren't on these diets before, so it could have just been that they were eating well or eating balanced. Or the fact remains, if you're doing high protein diets, animal meats, eggs, chicken, fish, cheese, dairies, that kind of thing. We see that the people that are on that lose weight quickly, never muscle. We see that people who have iron deficiencies, thalassemia minor, anemia, whatever it might be, no longer struggle with that. So you look at their bloods before, and then you look at the bloods a month and a half after they've been on these paleo diets. They look incredible. They sleep well. Hair is fantastic. Hair's not falling out anymore. There's a lot of positives, but again, if we're being honest, I don't know if that is something that you can do for the rest of your life.
Yeah, that's it.
No chocolate, no bread. And I say this to everyone. You can start off a diet to get to where you need to be, but to maintain that, you have to understand, unless you're living on an island with just fish and coconuts and water, you cannot limit your life because you're going on a girls' night and it's like chocolate pudding and you can't have it, or you're at a birthday party and you can't have a slice of cake, because I promise you that if you're doing your nutrition well 80% of the time, that bit of chocolate, that glass of wine, that slice of cake is never going to make you fat, ever.
Wealth in Health with Dr. Elena K. right here on 919 The Sunday Revolution. Back with more. I specifically wanted to ask kind of where you start trusting yourself and your body and how that actually feels, looks. We'll be back in a moment.
Yeah. All right. So I just wanted to make sure that I just ended off with a teaser and that you note some key elements from the interview. Obviously, I have a little bit more. I'm not saying Nicole doesn't have a rapport, but my personality is a lot different, a lot more different than Nicole's, as that's what makes us. Should I say, special, right? And you can see what is this all about. What are we talking about here? Great guests. Both chats had great, knowledgeable, powerful, and really interesting. I mean, they're engaging. Like, you want to listen more and more and more to these two particular expert professionals that we had in both interviews. It's not about the presenter, right? At any one point in the show, you are the core, but you're the conduit at the end of the day. What was great about this interview, obviously, again, the rapport with myself and Elena, because I've known her for so many years, is obviously a lot more comfortable. My approach to like speaking to a person is a lot more informal than I think a lot of other presenters. I suppose I don't have that clean polish that people like Nicole has. Mine is, there's again, you think they're debunking diet, so basic, so vanilla, but there's so many people have these particular questions. They Google this type of stuff. They constantly hit brick walls, and made sure that we do tackle in such a massive conversation, right? The most that we can in a small amount of time. Okay, so I'm going to leave it at that. Stop blowing more smoke up my toot, right? And I'm going to leave you with that. Have a great week ahead, and I'll see you in class. Cheers. Bye.